What's up, y'all? Billy from Perma Pastures Farm, and then here's my son for those that are new on board that don't yet know, the permaculture consultant. You can find him on YouTube and a bunch of other places. He's here in town, and he's basically, well, why don't you tell everybody what you've been doing in town? Well, first of all, it's my grandbaby's birthday, and we just got to celebrate that, so...
It's her first birthday.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was so fun watching her beat that cake up. Yeah, but she didn't sleep very good last night. But anyway, it's such a joy to see her grow up. Why don't you tell everybody what you're doing in town and why you're here?
So the past couple of weeks, on and off, I've been doing disaster relief for Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee. And I've been doing like recon. I've been bringing supplies to people, making connections so we can get the appropriate teams to certain people depending on what they need, stuff like that. So and also exposing grifters.
Yeah, there's some of that too. Well, there's a lot of that going on, but we've covered some of that before. Folks, I'm going to talk about something very little. It's going to be different than normal, but it's critical. I think it's absolutely critical. Let me just kind of go back a little bit. I remember, and a lot of you that are about my age or somewhere thereabouts, you probably remember too, the Oklahoma City bombing. When all that happened, I was still very much in the Army, and I remember coming home and written in spray paint back in Oklahoma City, "We will never forget." Those were the words written, and I think it was written on the YMCA or something like that. It might even be in that museum that they have down there. But anyway, "We will never forget." Those were the words that were written on the side of that building, as I recall. And so let me go back a little bit further. The great Jim Marrs, the guy who wrote Crossfire, you know, the movie JFK was basically based on that book written by Jim Marrs, and he's written a number of other books that are well worth reading, believe me. I remember him saying it took about 10 to 15 years after the Kennedy assassination before you could even talk about it in good company without people just, you know, recoiling.
About the conspiracy behind it?
Right, about the things that really went on behind it. Now, Oklahoma City. I get out of the Army, had the great opportunity of being in the company of a guy named Hoppy Heidelberg. I know it sounds like a funny name, but he was one of the grand jurors regarding the whole thing that went down in Oklahoma City. And he was essentially kicked off of there because he asked too many questions. And it was because of him that I learned so many things about the Oklahoma City bombing that a lot of people didn't know about. And then whenever I'd bring it up in good company, just like Jim Marrs talked about, you would see this fundamental recoil. Oh man, we've tried so hard to forget about that, or we don't want to hear about it. And I always thought that it was just disrespectful to the victims to not get to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
And then with every tragedy from that time until the present day, you see it over and over and over again. And I, for the life of me, could never understand why somebody would be so willing to go right back into the bottom of Plato's cave after being exposed to something that didn't make sense. It didn't have any sense at all. I could give you chapter and verse, and I don't want to bore everybody right now, but I know there's a number of you out there that would like to hear me do that. But I could give you chapter and verse of every single major event, world-changing event, over the last 100 years, probably from the top of, not probably, but definitely from the top of my head.
Not just the last 100 years, but since I've been alive.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could do it from, but I'm saying it could encompass it from that time, from everything from the sinking of the Lusitania to Pearl Harbor, you name it. Bunch of coincidences all seem to happen at the same time. And then essentially, no matter how many times people say we will never forget, they always do, and they do it willingly. Well, that brings me to the modern disaster, which is here in Western North Carolina. Here we are, barely a month removed from it actually happening.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you the little phenomenon that I've seen happen, and I'm saying this as a cautionary tale for everybody out there that may not be here in Western North Carolina or East Tennessee or even some places in South Carolina, because a lot of those other places have been forgotten, you know, lest we forget. I'm going to give you another example. Back in 2008, 2009, I couldn't find a job anywhere in the United States of amnesia. Couldn't find one. Had basically, well, those that lived through it would know what it felt like. Couldn't find anything. I mean, I was practically on the streets. That time for me was so indelible that I said, if I ever find myself back on my feet again, I will never be in that position again, ever. And I kept that commitment. I haven't been. Despite what came down, it was during that time that it really made indelible on my life and the life of my family, the need to be prepared at all times. So going right back to this disaster in Western North Carolina, I kid you not, I was going to bring it out here on the porch with us, but I got this notebook of all the things I got. Well, I didn't write down the things I got right because clearly I got them right. But I made an exhaustive list of all the things, no matter how small, of all the things I got wrong. And from that time, since the power came on, well, since even before then, I've been working on filling in all those gaps of all those things I got wrong. Well, let me tell you about a little phenomenon. Now, it's going to be difficult for me to say this without actually naming names, but I'll just say this. I can't even begin to count the number of people that live in this region right now that were absolutely, positively losing their minds when this thing jumped off. And the second that power went right back on, where do you think they went, son?
Right back into the matrix. Now, thankfully, not thankfully, but I've been in areas where this power still isn't on, and you can still see that they're like restless. They're still wanting to know, what went wrong, stuff like that, and they're still very much in that whole disaster mindset still.
Right.
And that's just right down the road from areas where the power is on.
And that's the thing. It's like the Great Depression. Before that, people tend to forget that we had the Roaring 20s. We had a chicken in every pot. Things were doing pretty doggone well in the United States of amnesia. And then because the Great Depression just wasn't turn the lights off and on back on again, because it lasted for so doggone long, there is not a person out there that lived through it that wasn't marked by it for the rest of their lives. I don't care how well their lives, how good their lives became. They were so fundamentally marked by it that they became frugal their entire lives, at least the ones I know about, and it's never changed them. Well, 2008, 2009 did that for me. But fundamentally, and I don't know why, and I talked about these other disasters because this is why Gore Vidal called this place the United States of Amnesia. That's part of the reason why he called it that, is because no matter what goes down, we just forget about it. Give it a little bit of time and we go right back into the matrix. And the very same people that I saw losing their ever-loving minds because they weren't even slightly prepared. Now, keep in mind, folks, from that time, from 2008 and 2009, and keep in mind, I'll never call myself anything that ends in ER because the powers that shouldn't be have managed to turn anything that ends in ER a pejorative. So I've been in the preparedness from that time until now, and William can attest to it because it's been fundamentally his whole life that I've been in the preparedness. So it's just been a way of life for us. But even despite that, I still found fundamental holes in my game that are being corrected right now that I will not repeat. I mean, for us, this whole power outage and the whole 9 yards has been nothing but a minor inconvenience. And for most people, the list I've made would be very, very minor to, they think, really? You put that on a list?
Yeah.
But it's worth putting on there. But so many people have gone right back into the matrix, and they're going to keep doing it. I'm doing this video with him as a cautionary tale because he's out there in the thick of it, seeing these disasters. And these people, fundamentally, the ones who have, suffered through this thing for this long and almost certainly will be dealing with it for what, months from now?
I mean, the power in some of these areas is projected to be on in like 4 to 6 months. And the water that they are bringing in, which is going to be in about 4 to 6 weeks, the water that they are bringing in is heavily contaminated. So even then, it's not like, I guess you could filter it from that point on, but it's still, a temporary Band-Aid. And when they do bring the power back on, it's not going to be built to necessarily to code or anything like that. It's not going to be built with any kind of resilience or anything like that. It's how quickly can we bring power back out to these people. And one of the dangers of that is that once it's out there, they're probably not going to go back and start like reinforcing anything or bringing things back up to code. It's probably going to be a temporary patch, and then they're going to start doing other work, and then these people are just going to be forgotten about.
The good thing about all this, though, the ones that do get through the other side of it, this mark will be so stamped into their psyche, the trauma of it, that they will never forget. they're all going to be in the preparedness overnight, just like your great-grandparents or your grandparents were as a result of the Great Depression. A lot of people don't talk about it, but some of the numbers I saw was 8 to 10 million people died during the Great Depression at a time in America where 90% lived rurally, 10% lived in the city. Now those numbers are flopped. With all the things that are going on, you know, we got an election next week and it could go, no matter which way it goes, most people are predicting that there's going to be mayhem. Are you prepared for it? Don't repeat the things that shouldn't had to have been learned in the first place. Because we fundamentally forget all these tragedies. I mean, go all the way back to the sinking of the Lusitania, you know, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Everybody says we will never forget, but we keep learning these lessons or having to. Some of us never do. We keep having to do this because we fundamentally forget. And folks, I'm telling you right now, with the lessons that have happened right here in Western North Carolina, it's made me redefine what I want this whole YouTube channel to be about. Before, it's been fundamentally permaculture, just like our podcast, Permaculture, Preparedness, and Practical Living. Yeah, it's still those things, but I'm going to have more of a key on preparedness because it's really baked into the permaculture recipe anyway, wouldn't you say?
I mean, anytime you do a permaculture design, you're taking in consideration, like you're preparing for your 100-year events, for your 100-year drought event, your 100-year rain event, stuff like that. So it is preparedness. You're preparing your landscape for the worst events that could possibly happen on your property. You're preparing for wildfires. You're preparing for floods. Right. You're preparing for all these things.
And that's exactly why I'm going to take another tact into what I've been doing for these times to come. It may not happen right after the election, but it's coming. It's coming. And I'm not saying this to be a fear monger. I'm saying this to remind you that we do, in fact, live in the United States of amnesia. And some of you might have noticed that some of the videos I've done as of late really haven't been about farming so much. And I've been trying to think, man, where do I want to actually go with this? Because it feels like the responsibility should be leaned more to the preparedness aspect.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing a lot more of that in the future. I know some people are not going to dig it. You might tune out. Okay, that's fine, because I'm not here to get 1 million subscribers like some people do. If I were, I'd be doing much different videos, okay?
You'd be doing, buy these 10 things from Walmart before we all die.
Yeah.
Those are the types of videos.
Or in the middle of a flood, while I'd turn the camera on myself, fake cry. Even though I got the camera on myself, I'd be doing those things in the middle of these things. Okay, yeah. I know exactly what I'd have to do to appeal to the masses, and I'm not going to do that.
We're having babies at a gas station down the road of a hospital.
Yeah, so at least we can end this thing on a high note. But folks, I just want to tell you that that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this thing, I'm still going to be doing farming and all that good stuff. I'm going to be talking about that, but I'm also going to fundamentally tie into how all of this should tie, how permaculture, preparedness, and practical living are really all in the same, and how we ought to be doing all the, how they're all baked in the same cake.
And that, I mean, a lot of people have gotten into permaculture because they're coming from the preparedness aspect. Like they start thinking, okay, they realize that there's danger out there. So they start preparing for the danger. And then they get animals and they think about food, or they start putting back food, and then they're like, okay, what happens when I run out? So then they get animals, and then they start, working with the animals, and they understand them better. And then they're like, okay, how do I feed these animals if everything shuts down? That's when they usually start getting into the permaculture aspect, because we're closing like loops. We're making all the feed and all the inputs and all that stuff come from the same property. So that way you're not reliant upon going to your feed store or anything like that.
Or in very close proximity to that property,
yeah.
If you have to, or working with your neighbors and stuff like that. It's always been baked in the cake, folks. That's why we've done the videos, and we got the videos to prove it. How we raise our layers for free and make money on them. How we raise our meat birds for free and make money on them, while producing 1 to 2 cubic yards of compost per week in the chicken tractors on steroids, invented by Jeff Lawton. We show you how we take our ruminants and we feed them for free. The only thing we've paid money for is our pigs. And those were 21 cents a pound because we didn't raise them ourselves. We had to buy we didn't farrow the pigs ourselves. So yeah, we've shown you how to do all those things. Those videos are there. We're going to be doing more of that, and then talking more about composting, because folks, that is just like the great Jeff Lawton says, all the world's problems are solved in a garden. And if you can start there at the compost, we're going to be talking more and more about that. That's one of the videos I hope to do with him before he gets out of here. But folks, this is exactly the tact I'm going to start making on this channel. And it ain't like he said, it's not going to be buy these 10 things or you're going to die. It's not going to be any of that alarmist garbage. It's going to be showing you things that we've done, that we do, not theoretical things that somebody else has talked about, but things that we actually do. And frankly, I've gotten away from it. I can't even tell you why. I've just kind of gotten away from it, but I'm going to get right back to it. I'm going to circle back to it.
Well, I can tell you why. You kind of, I think at one point wanted to distance yourself from the people who were doing the fear mongering. And it's not that you ever stopped talking about preparedness. You just, the focus wasn't on the disaster that's going to happen and how to prepare for it, but providing solutions for some of these problems. That was what your main focus was for a long time.
Yeah, because I never want to be one of those people that says, oh, this is going to happen. It was like one captain said to me once when I was back in the Army, don't ever bring me a problem to which you haven't already provided 2 solutions. Well, I live by that. And I make sure anybody that's working with me, don't ever come to me with a problem that you haven't already thought of 2 solutions on your own. And so that's pretty much what we live by. But like William said, there have been people that were formerly homestead channels, and when they saw the algorithms of YouTube and saw, oh, shoot, I can stack up a bunch of viewers overnight just by leaning into this fear-mongering thing and talking about preparedness, even though they got no background in it, that's what we'll do. So I leaned away from that. But look, I'm going back because I started in preparedness. This whole family did before we ever got into permaculture. But like William said, it just seemed like the natural gravitation. Like, okay, if you put back a year of food, well, what do you do on 366?
Yeah.
You know, but nobody ever talks about that. And there's so many myopic people in the preparedness space where they think, oh, I got guns. Well, what are you going to do if things jump off? Well, I'll go out there and take it. Okay, if that's how you roll, I don't want nothing to do with you. Or you got that person that says, well, I got gardens. Well, how do you protect it? You don't have guns. You think we got 2 of the 3 things solved and nobody ever thinks about the rest of it.
You know, the most valuable things that I saw while out doing all the disaster relief and stuff was, did you build community? Because if you didn't, then you were on your own and now you were at the point where you had to build community. Did you have communications? And did you have medication, not only for yourself, but for your neighbors? And like, there was at this last Kentucky Sustainable Living Festival that I just taught compost at, there was one guy, Jeff Smith, I'll be doing his festival in Ohio in May. And he was talking, his topic was why you should prepare for others. A friend that we have, Grizz, out in Nashville, he fed his community with his with his preps. So he turned potential looters or potential bad guys into allies and into friends, and then also convinced them with this like large-scale minor event compared to what could happen. He turned all these people into preppers, into preparedness people.
Yeah. So we're gonna be covering more of that in the future, and we're gonna be doing future collaborations, whether on the podcast. He's eventually gonna be back on the Permaculture Pimpcast, but we're gonna figure out a technical way of making that possible, and we're gonna cover a lot more of this stuff because that's really where I cut my teeth to begin with. And so, like he's right, we're just going to circle back to that because the times dictate that we need to do so. And like I said, I understand that some people, and not to say that we're still not going to cover farming because that's fundamentally, there's no distinction between any of them. There really isn't.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other places in there, y'all, where we need to be covering this thing, especially right now. And, you know, in times like these, also like Ben and Denise at Renewed Homestead, they were over here yesterday for the baby's birthday party. And like they were talking about, you know what? Also, they found out in these times who were the neighbors that were worth a hoot and who were the ones that weren't. Who were the ones that contributed and who were the ones that weren't. Found out a whole lot about that, you know, in the area where I live as well. People that were like, well, I wasn't affected. Well, they're not. Are they out helping anybody? You know. You got to ask yourself those questions. Well, look, y'all, I want to thank...
Hold on, before you end it, don't use, like, okay, this election's about to happen. If Trump comes into office, don't use this as a period of like, oh, well, we can relax now. Use it, if it is a period of reprieve, if it is a period of comfort, use that to just boost your preparedness. Don't use it as like oh, well, I don't have to prepare now because Trump is in office. And that's even if he does a fraction of what he says he's going to do.
Well, and
there's a chance he doesn't.
Well, I'm one of those people that thinks we're actually picking out the hood ornament on a car that's about to run you over anyway. Because we'll talk about more of that in the podcast because, you know, watch that little debate they had and find out the areas where they aligned, because they did align at least on one thing. But at the end of the day, I'm not seeing any of these people out. There's only one. Jesus is my Lord and Savior. And the rest of these people I see as polecats just, jockeying for who's going to be at the helm of the Titanic. Yeah, I know that doesn't sound like a rosy situation there, but honestly, I think there's so many things that are too far gone that are going to require more than just a adequate leader. And like I said, I don't see any of these people anymore as polecats. I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm not blue state, I'm not red state. It's the state against you. And if you think, and that's exactly what we've seen over the years,
Yeah.
all these years in preparedness. Whenever a Republican gets in there, all the people that were into preparedness, they acquiesce. They go right back to where they came from.
Yeah.
Every single time, without question. Then when a Democrat gets in there, the same people that acquiesced, now they're back in the saddle again. So if you're one of those people, then I don't know what to say to you, because I don't operate from that realm, and I don't believe I'm not looking for political solutions to spiritual problems, because I think that's what we're dealing with. But folks, I want to thank you so much, William. Tell everybody where they can find you.
The Permaculture Consultant is where you can find me. I'm on mostly YouTube, but you can also get a hold of me through Instagram and, believe it or not, TikTok. So,
Yeah. I'm actually on there too. They seem to mess with us less in terms of some of the videos and the information we want to put out there.
And if you need any consultations or anything like that, hit up the Permaculture Consultant at gmail.com.
I know a lot of people are hitting me up about bone sauce right now, but y'all, it's so dry, I can't make it right now and do it responsibly.
Yeah, before you make the next natural disaster.
Yeah, before I set this whole mountain ablaze and my house on top of it. So, I know people want it right now, and I know you got deer issues. I just can't make it until we're ready to be back in the saddle. So we're getting close to comfrey, in which everybody's always asking, what's this drying behind us, y'all? It's dried comfrey. That's how we get our ruminants. And even some of our omnivores, their minerals during the winter. So that's one of those preparedness things you might want to think about as well. That's why we talk so much about comfrey. I'm sure we got a little more at the website, but we're going to be running out here before too long. But hey, y'all, thank you so much for your support. I want to honestly give a hat tip to all the selfless people out there that are doing some of the disaster relief out here in so many different places. And it's going to be a big, long cleanup thing. And there's a number of people also hitting me up about where you donate to help clean this place up. Folks, we're setting up things right now, and I'm doing everything I can to not come to you with my hat in my hand one more time to ask y'all to donate for any other thing. So I'm looking for every free resource I can. I'm looking for wealthy benefactors. I'm looking for corporations that might feel a little guilty about some of the stuff that's going on out here. I'm doing everything I possibly can to not seek help from anybody out there again, y'all. And we're doing what we can to make the world's best compost to help clean up some of this area. Believe it or not, that's part of preparedness. All right, y'all, I know we've gone on a while here. Wanted to make sure I had my son on here while we had a little bit of time before he leaves. Thank you so much. Until next time, this is Billy and William from Perma Pastures Farm. He's actually the permaculture consultant. Check him out on YouTube. Until next time, stay alert.
Stay alive.